So as you might know, we recently just got a lot of spoilers to the upcoming standard set Edge of Eternities, and in this video I'm going to tell you about everything you need to know about these spoilers. So there's going to be a lot to cover in this video, so I'm going to put timestamps in for you for everything you want to know, so you can just skip ahead if you want to see anything specific, or if you're just interested in one kind of magic and really don't care about, let's say, Commander, or really don't care about the draft environment. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I think with that said, we can just jump straight into the first cards. Starting off with some uncommons. We got 3 of those actually, and these might not be the most exciting cards, but they can just give you maybe a little hint at how the draft environment is gonna look and what plans the draft decks of different color combos are going to have. In this example, we only got cards in green, red, and white colors, so that's exactly what I'm going to tell you about. Starting off with Harmonious Grove Strider. So for 3 and 2 green, you get a creature beast with its power and toughness both being equal to the number of lands you control, and ward 2. So this just looks like your go-to green beater, which you can always pick in a draft, which seems kind of okay, but never really overwhelming. Maybe in the late game it can really close out games, so definitely a card to consider when playing drafts with this set. In green, so also this just telling you that green is probably going to care about lands in any combo or just in one combo, but definitely going to care about lands. So as next card we have Sammy Ship's Engineer. So this is a red-white legend for 2 and red and white mana, which says at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, you create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token on a 2/4 body. This looks pretty interesting because it basically just tells you that red-white is going to be a very not necessarily attack-centered deck, but maybe also a just deck centered around tapping your creatures. So we have a new style of vehicles in this set with introducing a new mechanic that I'm going to tell you about later, but it does require to tap creatures, and I'm pretty sure that that's what this deck is trying to do. It tries to attack fast, tap your creatures to crew vehicles, and then get payoffs from tapping your creatures to crew vehicles. So red-white, definitely a cool color combo to keep in mind there. And for the last card we have Tanuk, Memorial, and Sign. For 1, a red and a green, you get a 2/4 with a landfall, which says whenever a land you control enters, he deals 1 damage to each opponent, and if it's the second time this ability is resolved this turn, draw a card. So this card also looks amazing. Just like I told you, green-red might be a landfall type of deck, which tries to get more than 1 land into play in a turn. This obviously works incredibly well with every fetch land, so a land that sacrifices itself upon entering or whenever you want to, and then searches up another land, which gives you 2 land drops for free and enables his ability that you can draw a card. Just genuinely in a draft environment, a repeatable card draw engine is absolutely overwhelming, and especially on a 2/4 body. If you have a long game with this, it can block very well in the early game, and then in the late game just give you an insane grind and value. So this is also definitely a card you should keep in mind when drafting colors where it fits. So next up we have the Seriema, and more importantly a card that introduces a new artifact type and a new mechanic to Magic the Gathering. So the Seriema is a legendary artifact Spacecraft for 1 and 2 white, which has the new keyword Station. So what Station means is that you can tap a creature you control to put charge counters equal to the creature's power on a spacecraft you are using the Station ability for. It's very similar to Crew. And then the spaceship has a certain number on it, and as soon as that spaceship reaches the amount of charge counters that are the certain number that is written on the spacecraft, you basically get the text line that is written under it. And if it has that certain number, then it also is an artifact creature. So you're basically crewing it, but you can crew it over many turns, and then it permanently stays an artifact creature. These also have an ability, a static ability in this case, that only applies as soon as it is an artifact creature. So that's how far I got it. By reading the rules text, it definitely seems a little complicated. There's definitely going to be a couple of wild rules combined with this, especially in like tournament situations, if any spacecraft is going to be playable there, so judges are surely going to break their head about this. The Seriema specifically says when it enters your search for a legendary creature card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle, which is a very nice ability, and then it needs 7 charge counters to be a artifact creature, 5/5 flying, so also a very solid body, and it gives other legendary creatures you control indestructible. So just just a white creature that is focused around legends, a white artifact, which seems pretty cool and definitely worth considering in some kinds of white decks that run a lot of legends. So next up, we are getting reprints of 5 of the Shocklands in Edge of Eternities. Yes, you heard me right, Wizard is reprinting Shocklands outside of a Ravnica block. So these lands, if you're not familiar with the Shocklands, they are all 2-color lands that come into play tapped unless you pay 2 life as they enter. So these are some of the most powerful lands out there, powerhouses in Pioneer and Modern. So this is just incredibly nice to see them in Standard. They're definitely going to upgrade the mana base of Standard decks. Also, a pretty interesting fact is that most of the times, or basically every time we have seen a cycle of Shocklands printed in a set, it's always either been the enemy colored ones or the allied colored ones. This is a mix of both, so we have some allied and some enemy colored Shocklands getting reprinted there. So that's probably nothing that's important for any reason, but it's just interesting to note that they're breaking this rule of just printing enemy or allied colored Shocklands in one set. Also probably important to note is that the reprinting of these lands, just like in Ravnica Remastered, is probably going to bring the price down. So if you're looking to sell these anyways, I would do it before the printing of Edge of Eternities, because it is probably or just very likely to drop the prices. Next up, we have a card that I am personally the most excited about in this spoiler season. It is Tezzeret Cruel Captain. Tezzeret is a 3-mana planeswalker that comes into play with 4 loyalty. It has a static ability that says whenever an artifact you control enters, put a loyalty counter on Tezzeret. It has a 0 ability that untaps target artifact or creature, and if it's an artifact creature, you put a 1/1 counter on it. It has a -3 that just searches your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, and puts it into your hand. And it has a -7 that says you get an emblem with at the beginning of combat on your turn. You put 3 counters on target artifact you control, and if it's not a creature, it becomes a 0/0 robot artifact creature. So a lot of text on this card, and I think it has a lot of formats where it can be really good in. So let's say in Modern, you can play this in an Affinity Shell. So as soon as it enters with 4 loyalty, you're going to attack with, let's say, with a Tamio, creating a clue token, getting it up to 5 loyalty, then play a Mishra's Bauble and another artifact, whatever, and you can instantly ultimate him. But I don't even think that that's the strongest part about Tezzeret here. I think even stronger, that you can -3 him to get something. In that regard, it probably isn't going to be anything that will win you the game on its own, but it will probably be a disruption piece like a Soulguide Lantern or just any of the best disruption spells in Modern, or just Magic the Gathering are colorless artifacts for 1 mana most of the time. So that's where I think that it can be very good in Modern. Another thing, I know nothing about Vintage, right? So I'm not a Vintage player, I'm not that rich, but I could imagine this card actually being good in Vintage. I mean, you are probably familiar with the Power 9. 6 of those are 0 mana artifacts. So just being able to search all of them up for with the -3 ability is probably going to be pretty powerful, especially when you can easily get Tezzeret out on turn 1 with something like Mana Vault or Dark Ritual. Also, the 0 ability is able to untap something like Mana Vault, which is also very powerful for Commander. So I think that could be something that is playable in Vintage. Just thinking about that, Stock Up is also a card that is getting played at least a little bit in Vintage, I think. That's also a 3 mana card, so I don't think it's too clunky. I think it might be a little clunky, but you could think about running this in Vintage. Just the 0 ability to untap target artifact or creature, this Planeswalker I think can be really powerful in Commander too, because with the -3 you can just search up Soul Ring, which is one of the best artifacts in Commander, and with the 0 ability untap it whenever you want to. Same for Mana Vault, just that Mana Vault taps for 1 mana more, and you can just totally get rid of the downside of Mana Vault by using Tezzeret's 0 ability and just generating absurd amount of mana. The -7 on the other hand, I don't think that it's that powerful or that impactful. It's a nice gimmick. If you cast a lot of artifacts and you're kind of in a good spot but you want to push some damage over the line, then that's probably going to be your go-to way to do that with Tezzeret decks. In Standard, I'm not exactly sure if this card is going to see play, because Standard doesn't have access to that many powerful cheap artifacts, and especially isn't that explosive or fast, so this might find some graveyard hate, this might find some I don't know, other types of interaction or powerful artifacts, but Standard doesn't have such a big pool of powerful artifacts. This might see play in Pioneer, just seeing that Karn the Great Creator was banned in Pioneer a while ago. The -3 actually reminds me a lot of Karn's ability, just that it's a little worse probably, because it searches your library instead of your sideboard, but you can still get something like Haywire Might or Graveyard Hate with it. So a lot of talking. Another thing that's probably very good, Vexing Bauble being restricted in Vintage as far as I'm concerned. You can also search that up with this Planeswalker, so I think Tezzeret Cruel Captain could actually be a very cool card and impact a lot of Eternal formats, which probably just says a lot about this card being very powerful, in my opinion at least. I would love to just see this being the truth and seeing this really cool card design actually working out in Eternal formats, but right now you can't tell, and I'm just going to be very excited to see if there's going to be some brews or this is actually going to be implemented in some kind of meta situation. So next up we have 2 of our Precon Commanders for Edge of Eternities. One of those is Kylo Apology Mind. It is a Jeskai commander. That is a legendary artifact creature 3/3 with haste that says whenever it becomes tapped, you proliferate. Pretty straightforward, right? So what I think is you could build this in a Voltron shell where you put counters on Kylo and then proliferate him up whenever he attacks, and also just put counters on everything you have, so use any different kinds of counters like charge counters, 1/1 counters, and just anything that you would like to proliferate. I don't think that you're going to build a poison build with Kylo because he's just not in the colors where poison is really important. You can also just build around him being an artifact and try to build something around artifacts and counters in that regard. The second commander we are getting is Zaro Genesis Shepherd. So for 2 mana and Jund, you get a 2/5 legendary creature insect druid with flying that says you may play lands from your graveyard, and whenever you sacrifice another non-token permanent during your turn, you put a number of 1/1 counters equal to Zaro's power on up to 1 target creature. So Zaro is obviously caring about fetch lands. So lands that sacrifice themselves to enable her second ability and can be played from the graveyard from her first ability. Pretty cool commander in my opinion. It also just generates a lot of power pretty uncontrollably. If you can get Zaro to a high power, you can just distribute a bunch of counters onto your creatures, especially when you're starting to to get multiple land drops a turn, which you can do with like a billion cards in green. So this just looks like a pretty cool commander, and you might even just end the game with some kind of fling effect if you scale your deck up, scale your creatures up, or just overrun your opponents in that regard. So next up we have Sothera the Supervoid. This is a 2 black and 2 generic legendary enchantment with whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent chooses a creature they control and exiles it, and at the beginning of your end step, if a player controls no creature, sacrifice Sothera, then put a creature exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control with 2 additional 1/1 cantrips on it. So this is also a card that looks pretty amazing in any kind of aristocrat style decks that just are looking forward to sacrifice their creatures anyways, giving you a big payoff by also getting rid of your opponent's board. It's probably going to be the best in Commander, in black-white aristocrats decks, or just any decks that look forward to make a lot of creatures they control die. A pretty cool bonus. This on its own just reminds me a lot of Grave Pact. The first ability is basically the same as in Grave Pact, just that Grave Pact says they sacrifice the creature, but Grave Pact costs the same amount of mana, and this also has a pretty nice upside by putting the creatures back into play under your control. So I really love this card, and I think it can find a home in a lot of different commander decks that like to have death triggers. And last but not least, we have a pretty cool cycle of basic lands, full art basics. These actually remind me a lot of the Infinity full art basics. All of those have some kind of planet on them, together with something that looks like a wild star, or let's say a spaceship. They all look pretty cool, and yeah, you are probably going to be able to pick them up for a low sum or just pull them out of boosters. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. These are all the spoilers that we got in this drop. In my opinion, these are really awesome, and you could just get a nice first peek at Edge of Eternities and just figure out that it's probably going to be a really cool set. I'm already excited drafting it and trying to brew with these new cards. Especially, I'm excited about Tezzeret. Let me know in the comments if you have any of those cards that are your favorite, or if you are looking forward to build a deck with any of these, or if you just think that I missed anything. All of these things, just let me know in the comments about them. Also, I would be very thankful if you just liked and subscribed. It's 2 clicks for you, but for me, I spent a lot of time making this video, so I would really be thankful if you guys just took a second and subscribed to the channel. See you in the next video. Bye bye, guys.